I'm pretty sure this is going to be the last home healthcare video that I'll be making. I have to double check my book, but around that time I was always writing things down whenever they happen, but I'll have to double check and let you know. So let's get into it. So around this time, I was packing a bag about, 3 days, sometimes even 2 weeks, and I'll be going to these clients' houses. I was working for this home healthcare company. And so I packed the bag for the 24th, 25th, and 26th of December, and I was at this woman's house. Now, I had already been to her house months before. I had been there consistently for months, and nothing ever happened in her house. So here we are. This is a small house. We're up in the living room and we're dancing. She likes to dance. And so we're up there dancing, having a ball. And I noticed a lot of new decoration. I'm like, oh, you've been decorating? She's like, yeah, the other girl, whenever she's on shift, she helps me decorate. I'm like, cool. The doorbell rings. I go to the doorbell. I go to the door. I open the door and it was my coworker, the woman that she was just talking about. And she brought this chair. And I'm like, you brought a chair? She was like, yeah, it's adding to our decoration. This is something that we like doing together. I'm like, okay, cool. That was sweet. So she brings the chair in. When she brought the chair in, she set it all the way at the end of the hall. And it had this painting that was over it. So I'm like, okay, that's sweet. So we continue our stuff. The lady leaves. We continue dancing. And then the woman wants to get in bed. So I put her in bed. Fast forward to after I put her in bed, I put the motion sensors down just in case she gets up. So the motion sensors started going crazy. And I looked at the camera and she's laying in bed. She's knocked out. So finally I stand up, and when I stand up to go check and peek my head around the corner, there's this dark figure sitting in the chair that my coworker had just brought into the house. Can't make out if it's a man or a woman just yet, but it was a very dark figure, and I heard stomping, but it didn't sound like feet. And then I look over and it has like this cane in its hand, just stomping it on the ground, on the floor. So finally I get up, I run over to my duffel bag, and I get my Bible out, and I get to praying. And it's just sitting there looking at me like, and I said, so you just not gonna go? Like, you just not gonna leave? So then once I started to get aggravated and I started to really be really forceful with the words from the Bible, that's when it stood up and it walked into the bathroom, and then it walked back out. But when it walked back out the bathroom, it did this high jump in the air. Like, okay, what was that about? After it did that little high jump, that weird thing, it disappeared from in front of me. But I heard the motion sensor, so I walked over to the camera. And when I walked over to the camera, I see his face. Yes, it was a he in the camera, and he's pointing at my client. So, of course, I'm aggravated. I go back there and I flick the lights on. I didn't care if she was asleep. I was just worried because I know you ain't here for her. Not right now. Not right now. So then fast forward, I played it off to the woman like, oh, do you have to use the bathroom? I'm so sorry that I flicked the light on like that. And so she's like, oh, no, I'm okay. So she lays back down. Once I go back out to the living room, I get to praying. I get to drawing crosses over all the doors, over all the windows. But next thing you know, I feel something walk behind me. And when I felt it, I turned around and he's right here in my face, right here in my face. I almost dropped to the floor, y'all, but I couldn't do it because then he'd be thinking that he had one up on me. So that entire night, he would just randomly pop up in my face. He would randomly pop up on the sofa, or he would be sitting in that chair that my coworker brought. Now, this is the scariest part. The scariest part is the fact that right after he left up out of my client's room, I could hear her gasping for air like she needed me. And so I ran in there and I sat her up on the edge of the bed and I'm like, are you okay? And she said that she said, I'm not ready to go yet. I'm not ready to go. Now, all this time, she's never talked like this. And so I'm just like, you ain't got to go yet if you don't want to. I think what made me more nervous about it is the fact that it was a dark figure that came to collect her. At that point, I was just like, do you want to pray with me? We had never prayed together before, but in that moment, she wanted to pray. So we prayed, right? So fast forward to while we're praying, he just sat down. Like, I wait. So I think that scared me too, because what has this woman done in her life that is so terrible to have a dark figure come to collect her and take her somewhere, and not even a prayer can stop it, can stop her from going with him. Now, here's the even scarier part. I got a feeling to look outside. So I went ahead and I looked out the window. And when I looked out the window, there were two other dark figures standing on the sidewalk. That scared the crap out of me because I know y'all better just be here for her. So I hear knocking on the door. Of course, I'm not answering it because I just looked out the window. I saw y'all out there. I'm not opening the door. And so the woman, she starts getting hysterical and she is like really going crazy. I'd never seen her like this before. And so do y'all know, like probably not even 24 hours after I left, that woman passed away. She passed away. And in my head, I felt so bad. But in my head, I was thinking like, oh my God, this family gonna think I'm the Grim Reaper.
I just got home from the house that I lived in when I first moved up to New England that was incredibly haunted. Went to drop off flowers for Carrot, which was my cat that I moved up here with, and sadly he passed away in that house within like a month or two of me living here. I had texted the owner of the house, who I'm still friends with, asking if I could bring him flowers because last week was the 2-year anniversary of him passing, and she said, sure, of course, you know, we're not there, but you're welcome to leave them on the porch. So I drive up there, I do that, and as I am backing out, I look up at the second floor window, which is a room that had a lot of activity when I lived there, and I see somebody standing in the window. There are no cars there. She told me that nobody would be home. That's why I left the flowers on the porch rather than going in and saying hi, but I am seeing a person standing in the window. Stuff like that was just common living there. Like there was always weird shit happening. But as I was driving home, I realized that I didn't tell you guys a few of the creepiest things that happened while I was living in that house. For example, I had a neighbor who was a few years younger than me named Eric, and he lived in the closest cabin to the house, which was like half a mile away. He knew that I was seeing things and experiencing things in the house, but he was a hardcore skeptic, and I'm sure he still is. He never seemed scared. He would always just try to come up with logical explanations, which I appreciated because I was living there alone, and sometimes it would get pretty scary. One night we're in the living room watching a movie, and he gets up to leave, and we both hear the voice of a little girl say something in the kitchen, which is like right next to the living room with no wall in between. We both look at each other and look at the kitchen because we're like, what the fuck was that? And like you couldn't make out what she was saying, but it was definitely a very high-pitched little voice. He turns to me and he's like, it had to have been a mouse. It couldn't have been anything else. It was just a mouse. I'm like, okay. So I walk him to the front door to see him out. When you walk in the front door, there's a mudroom where you can take your boots and your jacket and all that off. And then directly in front of you is the second living room. And then to the left of that are the stairs that go up to the second floor. And then hard left, there's an office, which is the room that Carrot died in. So as he's going to leave, his back is to the front door. He gives me a hug. And as he's doing that, I hear him gasp in my ear and pull away. And I look at him and tears are welling up in his eyes as he's looking up at the second floor landing up the stairs. I'm like, what is wrong? What just happened? Are you okay? And he is not breaking eye contact with the top landing of the stairs. Like he will not look at me. He is just looking up there and he's like, I swear to God, I just saw you moving up on the second landing. And I'm like, that's not possible. Like, what exactly did you see? And he's like, I saw you. It was your outline, but it was all black. Like, there was no color. I couldn't see hair color. It was just like your shadow moved from one side of the landing to the other. And at this point, tears are coming down his face. And again, this man is a skeptic. He doesn't believe in the paranormal. And he's like, I don't know what I just saw, but I need to leave. I'm like, so you're gonna leave me with something that looks like me in the house? Cool, thank you. And he's like, yeah, I have to go, bye. At night, I'm laying in bed. My dog is in bed with me, obviously, because he always is. And I'm drifting off to sleep and I hear something tapping on the dresser in my bedroom, which is at like the foot of the bed, kind of a few feet away. I slowly crack my eyes open and look, and I see the outline of somebody standing against the dresser, slowly drumming their fingers like they're impatiently waiting for something. My eyes obviously fly all the way open and they're gone. When I say stuff like this was common, it was like a weekly event. The first few months in that house, right after Carrot had passed away, my mom came up to spend Thanksgiving with me. I put her in my bedroom and I went into the guest bedroom, which if you've seen the videos, it's a yellow bedroom with like weird purple splotches all over it. It looks very creepy. It is a very creepy room. It has a crawl space. I didn't want to put her in there. So she sleeps in my room, which is much nicer and more comfortable. And the next morning she's like, why did you keep getting up in the middle of the night? And I'm like, I didn't. What are you talking about? And she was like, I was hearing footsteps on the stairs and outside of the bedroom like all night. Yeah, it happens. I wasn't up though. It wasn't me. The next night, she comes into the room that I'm sleeping in as I'm drifting off, and she's like, I'm hearing footsteps again. Unfortunately, you're just gonna have to get used to it, because it happens. You hear them all the time in this house. The final night she was visiting me, we were walking my dog, and there was like the big main house and then a barn, which wasn't used for anything. There were no animals or anything. The barn had a very creepy vibe, more so than the house even. Like when I would be in the barn getting firewood, doors would close on their own, objects would fall on their own. And if I asked nicely for whoever was doing that to please stop, they usually would. So my mom and I are walking Rocky, facing the barn, heading that way. We both, at the same time, see a shadow standing in one of the windows of the barn and then duck down. And that was its signature move. I would see something and then it would duck, like it wanted me to come look for it, which I never did. So yeah, that house, the property, the whole thing, it was absolutely wild. Oh, and if you're a newer follower and you don't already know this story, the property that house is on was originally owned by the Mack family, which is the maternal side of Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism. His mother's family lived there for generations. There are roads all over the town named after her family. I don't know if it's them haunting that house or what it is, but something is going on there.
South Africa is really not a real place. Somebody from South Africa submitted a story to me telling me that people don't only get kidnapped by mermaid spirits, that there are other types of spirits in the water that kidnap people, i.e. snake spirits. I am back with another spooky story. Now this story is called The Snake Husband. So in parts of Africa, people whisper about the Mami Wata spirits, water beings who can appear human but often take form of a snake. And they say if one of them falls in love with you, there is no escape. So a young woman, we're gonna call her Amara. Amara lived near a forest river. Every evening she fetched water alone. Although the elders warned her never answer if you hear your name called by the river. So one night Amara was just fetching her water, minding her business. Suddenly she heard it, and it was like a soft, deep, and a very sweet voice called her Amara. She turned, but no one was there. She turned back and she notices that the waves in the water was just a bit strange. So that night, she doesn't think anything of it. She goes about her business, gets her water, goes home, and returns the following day. Now, the next day, when she returned to the same spot, mind you, this time, a tall, handsome man stood at the riverbank, dressed in white. The man was described to have really long eyelashes, and his eyes seemed like they had a glimmer in them. And he also had an interesting smile. However, the man was alluring and handsome. He was beautiful, and it seemed like he had his eyes set on Amara. The second Amara saw this dude, she was enamored. He approached her to talk to her, and surprise, within them getting to know each other, it seems like this man is Amara's dream man, the husband that she had been so patiently waiting for this whole time. Like, even his voice was soft. And while they were talking by the water, he offered her gifts, protection, and even love. Amara left, her chest tight. She just met the man of her dreams. How could she say no? So the person who submitted the story was Amara's sister. So she's telling it from her POV. Well, Amara started seeing this guy. They started going out to date, and Amara seemed like she was falling head over heels. 2 months into the relationship, Amara really started to want to meet the guy's parents, go to his house. However, he was always hesitant. Every time they would see each other, he would come pick her up, or they would just hang out in Amara's house. Well, 2 months into them dating, people noticed Amara changing. Her skin grew unusually smooth and cold. Her pupils became narrow like slits. At night, the weirdest thing, her family heard hissing coming from her room. And when they entered, the hissing was gone. Her skin started to shed like that of an actual snake. At this point, Amara's mother is having nightmares that there's a snake in her house. The next thing we know, the two kept dating and they became inseparable. Even though Amara looked like she was getting worser and worser. So Amara meets this beautiful man by the water and they become inseparable. Now Amara's sister, upon meeting him, had her own reservation. She said, and I kid you not, the man's eyes damn near glowed. Even at nighttime, his eyes glimmered. He just seemed like something else. So Amara's sister would try to warn her about him, but to Amara, it kind of came off like the sister was being a hater, considering the sister was still single. At that point, the two sisters get into argument, and Amara's sister decided that she will no longer speak on that relationship. The beautiful man winds up proposing to Amara. So Amara comes home and lets her family know that she's getting married. Everybody else seemed to be happy for Amara, and they asked Amara to meet her fiance's family. The only thing is, though, Amara herself has never met that man's family. So now there's a lot of pressure on Amara to make this meeting happen. So she goes to her man and starts putting pressure on him. One day, I guess he finally caved and he was like, okay, I will introduce you to my family. He basically told her that she had already accepted his proposal, which means that she's accepting of him, and that maybe it is the right time that she meets the family. And Amara's thinking maybe this guy is just really formal. So I guess when he figured that Amara was finally ready to meet the fam, he took Amara to the water, and Amara's probably wondering what is she doing here back at the same spot that they met. Well, this man took Amara to the water, inside of the water. Since Amara's sister was the one who submitted the story, at that moment she had no idea what had happened. Her sister was gone for 3 weeks. And everybody back on Earth is worried sick about this girl. Her sister thought that her boyfriend did something to her, might have unalived her. And considering people went around looking for the boyfriend too, well, the fiance, and no one could find either of them. People are thinking they eloped, or thinking that he unalived her. It's so many different theories going on. But when Amara comes back to find out what they found out, shocking to say the least. Well, Amara comes back to Earth 3 weeks later soaked. Her sister saw her walking in the yard, looking dazed and confused. She was soaking wet and she looked like a zombie. And the thing about her that sent chills down her sister's back was the fact that her sister barely recognized her at first. That's how different she looked after those 3 weeks. Her hair's texture was different. Her hair was straight and kind of stringy looking. Her eyes had the same glimmer that her fiance had. Her skin, at least 5 shades lighter. One look at her, you can just tell that she wasn't a product of God. The crazy thing about it too, when she came back, everyone had all these questions. Where did you go? What happened to you? Why do you look like this? Amara was mute. She could not speak. They would ask her about her fiance. For 3 months, Amara didn't mutter a word. During those 3 months, she would constantly go missing and come back in the same state. People started keeping watch to make sure that she stays in her bedroom at night. Invited the neighborhood's priests and pastors to come and pray over this girl because nobody knew what was going on. And the entire neighborhood started coming together to pray for Amara. And after 9 months, Amara's skin started darkening up. She went completely bald, and slowly but surely she started looking normal again. After 9 months, she started to speak. And when she spoke again, she talked about what she saw below and how it horrified her and shook her to her core. After the 9 months, Amara decided to give up her life to Jesus Christ because what she had saw was enough to convince her that God was real.
So I have in fact experienced a real life haunting one time when I was babysitting. Very old house, 3 kids ages 5, 3, and 1. Before the parents left, the dad looked at me and said, "Hey, I'm sorry." I have no idea what he was saying sorry for. I was like, "Oh, that's okay." The whole time I kept hearing creaks and whispers throughout the house. But it was a really old house, so I was like, I'm just imagining this. And the 5-year-old looks at me and says, the 5-year-old looks at me and says, "Hey, did you know we used to have a cat and it on Halloween, and so my dad buried it in the backyard." I was like, that's great. If you are with kids a lot, you know they say weird things. She wanted to play a game where she was the cat that I had to bury in the backyard. It was a weird night. So I put the kids to bed. Like clockwork, 5-year-old gets up and says she needs a glass of water. I'm getting her a glass of water when a cat covered in dirt runs up from the basement. I say, "Hey, I thought you said your cat." She said, "He did." I said, "Then who's this cat?" She looks at me and says, "What cat?" And it's like swirling at her feet. I think she's messing with me. I'm like, whatever, so I send her back to bed. Then I was like, well, I have this stray cat running around these people's house. So like an idiot, I chase the cat and it runs into the basement. Why I followed it down, I don't know. But I did, and when it got to the bottom of the stairs, it went into a corner and disappeared. I was like, weird. I went back upstairs to go do my homework. Then I hear metal clanging at the front door, like someone's clanging. And I think the parents are home early and they're struggling to get inside, so I go to open the door for them. And they're like so loud, they're struggling so much. I open the door, nobody's there. I was like, I'm getting a little freaked out now. So I go back on the couch to start texting my friends what's happening. And I turn around and the picture behind me has turned sideways. Then I start hearing whispers around the house. I think the kids have woken up, so I go to their room to tell them to be quiet. Knocked out asleep. Got really nervous, so I had to go pee. I go to the bathroom and all the lights in the house shut off. I immediately text the parents, "You need to come home. Something's wrong." All the lights just shut off. As soon as I texted that, I heard footsteps coming upstairs, like from the basement coming upstairs. And there are voices saying, "Where is she? The lights are off. Where is she? The lights are off." And so I'm like, okay, thank God the parents are home. Like, I'm done. And so I turn on the flashlight on my phone and I go to meet them at the steps. I thought it was weird they were coming from the basement, but I figured maybe there was like a door to the garage there or something. And so I yell out to them like, I'm here, I'm over here, your lights came out, sorry. I shine my flashlight towards the basement. No one's there. Their 2 dogs run over to me and sit on my right and my left and lowered their heads towards the basement. And I'm hearing whispers and I'm assuming the dogs heard it too. It's probably the scariest I've ever been in my life, but I'm still a babysitter, so I still have to like protect the kids. So I run back into the hallway in front of the kids' room just to stand in front. Like if I was gonna go out, at least I was gonna go out protecting those kids. Then all of a sudden the whispering stopped. The lights slowly came back on. I got on the phone with some friends. They were trying to come pick me up, but I couldn't leave the kids. I stayed on the phone with friends until the parents got home. I was really shaken up, so I couldn't even tell the parents what happened. I just took the money and left. I was so scared, I turned on the lights in my car on the way home because I just was horrifying. And then I slept with all my lights on that night. I never went back, but I am still a babysitter. So, I guess it didn't scare me too much.
Hey guys, so I have another story for you. This is an older story. I've shared it before. I'm going to condense it down to one video. This is probably without question the spookiest call I've ever been on in my law enforcement career, and I hope it never gets topped. But anyhow, it was several years ago. I was on the overnight shift. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. It was around Halloween time, so it's already got that spooky season feel. This elderly gentleman who lived out in the country, he drove to town for whatever reason and went to this 24/7 gas station, asked the clerk if he could use the phone to call 911. The clerk, of course, said yes. He calls 911 and tells dispatch something along the lines of like, my wife's missing or she's been kidnapped or something, yada, yada, yada. And to have the officer meet me at our residence. So I go to the residence, and as I pull up and I get out, I don't see any red flags, if you will. Normally in a situation like this, you would see or hear some commotion. You would have something standing out to you. I'm not getting that. It looks very calm, very quaint. I don't know what I'm really walking into at this point. I have terrible officer awareness. I walk up the driveway and I pass his truck, and he hops out of the truck behind me, and as I turn around, he's got a handgun. And he's extremely agitated and upset and emotional at the fact that his wife is missing or kidnapped or whatever it was. So after a few minutes of coaxing the handgun from him and make it safe, I put it on the hood of his truck. I'm like, okay, talk to me, what's going on? And he says, okay, follow me to the house. So I follow him to the house, and as he gets to the door, he says, and I will never forget this, he says, do you believe in God? And I said, yes, I do. And he says, good. And that means you believe in the devil. And I'm like, what? So he opens the door. He says, forgive me for all the candles. He says, that's the only way we can keep it out or something like that. And there's no candles, but yet he's tiptoeing through the living room like he doesn't want to step over these mysterious candles. There's no candles. So as I'm walking in the living room and all the furniture's gone, it's just an empty room. Like, I don't know if they're moving or they just moved in. It's just completely bare and empty. Although at every window around the home, I see a rifle or a shotgun, and I see spent shell casings and bullet casings. And I'm like, hey, bro, what's up with this? And he said, oh, I've been shooting out at these demons outside all night, trying to keep them out from coming in the house. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, well, we're not going to have that right now. So he lets me make all of his firearms safe, and talking to him, trying to figure out where his wife may be. And then we're in this cabin-esque home, and there's a loft, and I see above us his elderly wife comes to the edge of the loft, and she's wearing this white, like, robe, you know, like something Ebenezer Scrooge would wear. A little creepy looking, you know, and she's just standing there staring down at us. And I'm like, all right, she seems sensible. I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to talk to her, because obviously he's the issue and we need to get him some mental health treatment. So I'm like, hey, I found her. And he's like, oh, that's great news. That's great news. You know, he's all excited. He's calmed down now. He's like, she's safe. She's sound. Good to go. So I'm like, we should be in and out in 5 minutes. So as I walk up the steps, I go up there and I talk to her and I'm like, hey ma'am, your husband's having some mental health issues. And she's like, I know. And she's like, I don't know what to do with him. I'm like, I get it, you know, boys will be boys, but I'm gonna have to take him to the hospital. And I'm like, I'm gonna probably need you to help me out and, you know, convince him to go with me. And I think we're on the same page, and all of a sudden she says, am I in trouble? And I'm like, no. Why would you be in trouble? And she's like, well, I'm curious. And I'm like, well, he's not in any trouble either. But why did you say, are you in trouble? Like, there's something not right about how she said it. And she said, well, because I fed it. I'm like, fed what? She's like, I was feeding the devil babies. And I'm like, what? Like, I get it. He's having a mental health issue, but it's very rare, if not impossible, in my opinion, to have two people having both the same mental health issues. And I'm like, run that back again. And she said, I stole babies, and the only way I could keep the devil happy and away from us, because he broke into the home, was to throw them over the loft, because I'm only safe when I'm up here, elevated, and the devil's down there. I throw the babies over the loft or the balcony, and the devil feeds them. Or I feed the devil. But the problem is he won't leave me alone now. He's attached to me, and I'm like, okay, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna go back down and talk to your husband. He's the more sensible one. I'm like, I'm never sleeping again. So I go down the steps. I talk to the husband. I'm like, bro, both you and your wife are gonna have to take a trip with me to the hospital. And he is now freaking out. He's trying to run outside. I don't know why. I'm trying to wheel him in. I'm like, dude, I don't want you to go out there. It's pitch black. It's the middle of the night. Like, what is it out there that you need to do? And he's like, I need to get the devil away. I need to get the devil away from my house. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the devil is throwing the babies into the fire. And I'm like, what? And he said the demons are dancing around the fire, and the devil is in the middle, and he's throwing the babies in the fire, and it's making the fire bigger, and I have to go put out the fire. And I'm like, bro, come back to reality. There is nothing out there. I am looking, and it is pitch black out there. And he's like, oh, you messed up. He's like, you just pissed them off. They're all looking at you now. And he's like, oh, they're running over here. They're running over here. And I'm like, well, shut the shades. Like, I shut the shades, and I'm like, now I'm wigging out. And I'm like, all right, look, we need to come back to reality. Luckily at that time, another deputy shows up. The ambulance shows up. We both convince them to go to the hospital and get some mental health treatment. They do the same thing at the hospital. The doctor's like, I'm going to send them away, and hopefully we can get this fixed. They went away for a few days. They came back, and I never dealt with them again. I never had to go to the house again. Sadly, I did hear that the elderly lady later passed on a few years later. But to this day, I've never had a call where both people were suffering from the same delusion. And in my opinion, there was something extra sinister involved there that's beyond what medicine or therapy could solve, if you will. But I want to know your thoughts. Tell me what you think. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Okay, you all asked for it, so here we go. My name's Sydney. I worked as an ER nurse for about 10 years, and I have seen some crazy stuff, but this one in particular still keeps me up at night. Because I don't want to violate any HIPAA laws, I am not going to be naming any patients in this story, and I cannot give you the exact location, but I can tell you it happened in the Appalachian Mountains. So we got a call from EMS, and the original call was for an elderly lady with altered mental status, but then a call came in right after that, and it was for her son that had a severe arm injury. So that's a pretty normal call to get for like an older person not acting right. They can have UTIs, they could, sometimes dementia, things like that can make them act different. But the fact that she was coming in with her son, and her son had a severe arm injury, we were all like, what's going on? So she came in first. They brought her in on the stretcher, and she was in handcuffs. This like 80-something tiny little woman in handcuffs. So of course we were like, get her out of these handcuffs. Like, she's gonna rip her skin. Like, what is going on? And baby, as soon as those handcuffs came off, I understood why they put them on her. This frail 80-year-old woman had the strength of like a grown 40-year-old man. It took multiple nurses, multiple security officers, and paramedics to just hold her down on the stretcher. She was also contorting her body in ways that I never thought possible. Just like her spine, like coming up off the stretcher, her legs up by her head. Like, it was weird. She was thrashing all over the bed, biting, spitting, kicking. The scariest part is her voice was not like a normal, like, 80-year-old woman voice. It was this deep, guttural, like, voice. At one point, she looks over at me and she goes, "Get this brute out of me." And as we're dealing with this, her son comes in behind her and his arm has a massive chunk bitten out of it. And I'm not trying to get too gory on you guys, but like, I'm talking tendons, ligaments hanging out of his arm. So we got more information from the son and he was like, yeah, that's my mom. She lives with me, but this is not my mom. Like, she is normally a sweet little lady. And then she just came in my room in the middle of the night, bit down on my arm and ripped a huge chunk out of it and just continued to attack me. And he's like, I had no other option but to call the police. So we start doing all the things to get this lady to calm down so she wouldn't hurt us or hurt herself. I'm talking sedatives, IV injections, all the things. Nothing is touching her. We gave her enough medicine to put down like a horse and nothing touched it. We also ran all the tests that would cause her to act this way. Like, we did a urine screen, we did like blood work, all the things. Everything came back completely normal. At one point, one of the nurses said, "We need some holy water." As soon as holy water was mentioned, this lady, like I told you, she was thrashing all over the place, stopped thrashing and just looks up and goes, "Don't you dare." All of us nurses just kind of looked at each other like, well, that was weird. We ended up admitting her to a room upstairs. I obviously did not see this because I stayed down in the ER, but it was later told that nothing they did helped her. She just continued to act completely insane until the son was like, I want an exorcism done on her. They had to call in a priest to the hospital to do the exorcism, and shortly after that she went home. So believe what you want, but the fact that this lady's tests results all came back clear and the only thing that ended up helping her was an exorcism, I mean, I know what I believe and that's why I'm right with the Lord. But it's still just one of the wildest things that ever happened to me as a nurse. So now I'm interested, has anyone else ever had an encounter like this? If you have, leave it in the comments. And also, if you want more stories about some of the crazy things that I've seen as an ER nurse, I was also a psychiatric nurse for 3 years, then let me know.
This is one of the scariest stories I've ever read. It was posted 10 years ago on Reddit by an account called A Writer Named Williams. It was on the subreddit called Let's Not Meet. The story is called Poker Face. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this very scary story. This happened in Antioch, California. It was around 2 a.m. I was at a friend's house, safe and warm, sheltered suburbia. We were having a lot to drink, chit-chatting, enjoying ourselves, of course. When you're having fun, time hits the fast-forward button, and those few minutes turn into an hour. I had too much to drink. My friend has a bit of an abrupt bedtime, so I had to dodge out early, still intoxicated. I felt too shameful thinking I'd be asking too much to stay in his house to sleep off the drunkenness. I suppose he was either too rude or too drunk to consider it himself. Whatever, sometimes a little inconvenience makes you appreciate everything else. I needed about another hour or so to sober up and drive back. As fast as time passed during my stay, it decided to drastically slow down as soon as I stepped out of his house. It was a cul-de-sac area, a concrete jungle with the stem of the street breaking into a fork. Alongside the road, my car was parked. The only street light that worked was in the middle of the cul-de-sac circle, about 80 yards away. I stumbled towards my car, produced my keys, and felt the metal line up. Opened my door and shifted to the back seat. Because this was a dark, strange, and unfamiliar neighborhood, I took the leftover newspapers and a sweater in my backseat to cover myself up. I was a little scared. I wanted to camouflage myself and not just be some guy awkwardly sitting in his car, waiting for time to pass in order to drive home. I couldn't fall asleep. The uncomfortable feeling of a cheap backseat bed enshrouded in darkness didn't make the chance of slumber easier. It felt too ominous. And of course my mind began to wonder. I thought of worst case scenarios, like how the police would shine their lights on me through the window, or a drunk driver hitting my car, and... Wait. In the distance, about 100 yards away, I hear footsteps approaching. The gravel scuffed with each step forward, growing in proximity but periodically taking stops. I wondered why until it made sense in my mind. Whoever it was probably looking through cars carefully, with the intent to steal one. I couldn't recall how many cars were on the block, but I counted 3 full stops until he was at my window, breathing. I froze. There was no more than 1 foot between us. The car encapsulated me as I lay hidden beneath backseat clutter, forming myself into an object, trying my hardest to be unnoticeable, unmoving, and simply not there. "I see you," said a 40-plus-year-old man in a perverse baby talk. I imagine when you were playing hide and seek and one of your friends tricks you into coming out, he said it in that tone of voice, as if baiting me, like he was questioning whether the clutter in the backseat was just clutter or a person. I didn't want to move or check the window. I remained clutter. Give me an Academy Award. My body reacted by minimizing my breathing so much that I felt paralyzed. I dare not to look. My eyes fixated on the back of the passenger seat. I didn't blink, I didn't move, I didn't breathe. My heart was pounding so hard it shook my body with each throb. He circled around the car. My ears didn't fail me. I heard the steps. I felt like I was part of the car. I could feel him touching the trunk as he carefully pressed down on it, as if to test the alarm, as if to test me. I was in the middle of fight or flight. I couldn't do either without elevating danger. I was frozen and hoping to God he was bluffing. He circled the car again. The door handle to my right jiggled. He was pulling it multiple times. "I see you." Same tone, but more agitated and stressed, more convinced that he was trying to make that clutter move, revealing itself to be one of his expectations that it was me. My muscles tensed like a cow before slaughter. That had to be metal against glass. "Take a penny right now and tap your window." A crowbar, a knife, a rock, a gun. My eyes fixated on the seat in front of me, never averting my gaze like he was. I was covered enough to where I couldn't see beyond the seat in front of me. I know I couldn't see him, but I can feel his eyes resting on top of me.
"My name is Poker Face. What's your name?"
The voice changed, in a lower, demented and serious tone. My mind forced a visual. It wasn't anything human. I already accepted my death. I was ready to be shot in the head, ready to take a life-changing bullet, multiple knife wounds. Just make the sleep bearable, not excruciating, as you drained me of life. I wouldn't know how to react. My thoughts grew dimmer. I imagined my friend waking up the next morning after a calm night of safe and sound sleep, only to discover my mutilated, defiled, and bloody body hanging outside of my car door. It was then I heard nothing but my own heart. What was this person doing now? Just staring at me in the middle of the night, talking to me, or a messy pile in the back seat? Time froze. The footsteps were being swallowed in the distance. Thank God he left. I waited another hour until the sun showed hints of itself. I jumped in my front seat and bolted out of there, wide-eyed and sober. And that's the end of the story.
This is one of the scariest stories I've ever heard. A woman on Reddit shared her experience as a recent divorcee that was starting over. She started renting a new apartment and was really excited for a clean slate. Her new place was really nice. It was one of those types of complexes that even has a doorman, so she felt really safe there. At the time of her story, she'd been dedicating a lot of time to her job and would work late most nights, get home in the early morning hours just to get a few hours of sleep and have to wake up and do it all over again. She would wake up in the morning to start getting ready for work and realize that she had been so tired and out of it that she kept leaving the door unlocked. And then she started to notice that things inside of her apartment would seemingly go missing. At first, it was just small things like nail polish, her hairbrush, things that at first she was certain she had just been misplacing. But then it turned into more personal things like pictures, shaving razors, and most disturbingly, her underwear. This started to make her feel really on edge. So she started to make sure that she was being more intentional about locking her door at night. She would get in the habit of doing it every single night before going to sleep and then would repeat over and over again out loud that she had locked the door. But morning after morning, she would still wake up to find her door unlocked, and she couldn't understand how this kept happening. So she decided to invest in a camera. One night after returning home from work, she set the new camera up and hid it underneath a pile of towels on the floor. She made sure to lock the door and then she went to bed. When she woke up the next morning, everything in the apartment looked normal and nothing seemed to be missing, but the door had somehow been unlocked. So she decided to check the footage from her new camera. She had to fast forward through hours of footage but couldn't find anything. Right when she was about to give up, she noticed the door handle jiggle and then the door slowly crept open. A figure slid through the open open door and walked toward the camera. The woman got so scared that she immediately paused the footage and called police. While she was on the phone with 911, she studied the figure on the camera footage and knew without a doubt that it was her apartment's maintenance man. She played the tape a little bit more and could see him walking around her apartment comfortably as if he were in his own home. Then she watched as he turned to walk toward her bedroom just out of view of the camera. The police arrived at her doorstep and she showed them this tape. The officers assured her that they would catch this guy, and she was so exhausted from this entire ordeal that after the police officers had finished their report, she went to lay in bed and take a nap. As she laid there, she was completely drained but still unable to fall asleep. That's when a chilling realization began to wash over her. When she watched that tape, she saw the man enter her home, but she never saw him leave. She sat up in bed and quickly looked around the room. She didn't see anybody, but she kept her attention focused on her bedroom door. In a rush to get to safety, she swung her legs over the side of her bed. Her feet hit the cold wood floor, and then she felt warm breath on her ankles. She raced out of her room as quickly as she could and caught the police officers just as they were leaving. When they went inside of her apartment, they found her maintenance man hiding under her bed, clutching a knife and a Polaroid camera.
Have you guys heard of the crime babies of the cornfields? One of my followers named Lola told me about it in Iowa State. Yeah, you will not be seeing me. Before I begin, if you're new and you have a horror story that you want me to read, please follow my Instagram that's linked in my bio and DM me your story. So Lola grew up in Iowa, and there's one story that her mom told her that has never left her mind. It's the kind of story that makes you double check your locks at night and never look at cornfields the same way ever again. One evening years ago, Lola's mom was driving down a quiet road on her way home. The kind of road that's nothing but long stretches of farmland, cornfields on both sides, and not even a single car passing by. The sun was starting to dip, and she knew that in just a half an hour, it would be completely dark. And then Lola told me the unexpected happened. Her mom's car broke down, out of nowhere. The engine cut out, dashboard's lights flickered, and the car rolled to a stop right on the side of the road. She told me her mom remembered the silence afterwards. No other cars around, no houses nearby, just the whisper of the wind moving through the air. She told me her mom got out to check underneath the hood because she thought it was something small. And that's when she heard it, a baby crying. She said at first it was faint, like it could have been her imagination. But then she paused and really listened, and there it was again. Clear, sharp, unmistakable. A baby's cry echoing from inside of the cornfield. She told me immediately her mom's instincts kicked in. She called out, "Hello, is someone there? Do you need help?" Her voice carried across the empty field, but nothing answered back. Just that same little cry, and she told me her stomach started to twist. She turned back toward her car, telling herself that it couldn't be real. Maybe it was just an animal or the wind playing tricks. But the crying continued, soft at first, but then rising. Almost as if the baby was in pain or left alone to die. And then Lola told me one thought really got to her mom. What if it really was a baby? What if some desperate person had left a child out there to die? She could not shake that thought, and as a mother, she thought, what if it was one of her kids? She knew she couldn't just ignore it, and Lola told me her mom walked into the cornfields. Just a few rows at first, brushing past the tall stalks of corn, her shoes crunching on the dirt, and she called out again, louder this time. "Hello, do you need help? I hear a baby." But then again, it was nothing. No voice answering her, no footsteps, no one saying, "Over here." Just the same haunting cry. She told me at that point her nerves spiked. She told herself she'd gone far enough and started to turn back. But as she walked out, the crying didn't fade. If anything, it stayed just close enough, as if it were following her, begging her to come in deeper. Lola told me her mom froze, heart pounding. And then she went back in. This time she walked back even further into the rows of corn. The sun was dipping low now, streaks of orange and pink in the sky fading to gray, and the shadow between the stalks grew darker. She kept her eyes fixed ahead, trying to follow the sound. But that's when she noticed something strange. The cry didn't sound right. It wasn't natural. It wasn't the way that babies usually cry. Lola told me her mother noticed that there was a break in it. A stutter, almost like a glitch. As if the sound was repeating, like it was on a recording loop. She told me her whole entire body went cold. Her mom stopped moving and listened. And that's when she heard something else. Not the cry this time, but the corn. The stalks were rustling, but not from the wind, from movement. heavy, fast movement like someone or something was running toward her. She told me her chest tightened and she did not wait another second. She spun around and bolted, shoving her way back through the corn. Not caring if she scratched herself on the stalks, she just ran. She made it back to her car, slammed the door shut, locked every lock, and sat there trembling in silence. Her breaths coming in short gasps, and then Lola told me her mom heard that the crying had stopped. Everything had gone completely still. Lola told me her mom waited in the car until her husband showed up. He jump-started the car, and on the ride home, she told him everything over the phone. The baby cries, the stuttering sound, the stalks moving closer, the feeling that she had just escaped something horrible. And that's when he told her something that made her blood run cold. He said that what she experienced was actually a tactic. Traffickers, or sometimes worse, killers, sometimes use recordings of crying babies to lure women away from their cars, away from the safety of the road and deeper into isolated areas. And in a place like a cornfield, no one would ever find you. The thought alone shook her to the core, and even mine just reading it. To this day, Lola's mom still wonders what would have happened if she had gone out further into the cornfield. If she hadn't noticed the fake cry, if she didn't listen to her gut when she heard the stalks moving, what exactly would have happened? And that's why Lola told me that whenever she drives past those endless cornfields in Iowa, she can't help but imagine the sound of a baby crying inside. And Lola told me that she knows her mom was never supposed to come back out of there.
There's a cursed highway right down the road from our house. Story time. People call it the road that eats children, and you'll see why. As kids, we were all taught not to go anywhere near this road because so many children and pets had died out there, and some adults too. There have been so many wrecks because of people seeing things that aren't there. Locals think that this road is cursed, and it lures victims out there by showing them a loved one, someone who may be alive or has passed on, just something to lure you in. So back in the early 70s, there was a man, woman, and their 3 kids, and they pulled into a church parking lot that was located on this road. So Dad goes into the church to talk to the pastor while Mom and the kids wait out in the truck. So all of a sudden, while Dad's in the church, he hears tires squalling, a loud bam, and people start screaming. He runs outside, and that's when he finds out the mom had let the kids out to play, and his 3-year-old son had run out the highway and got hit by a Mack truck. The mom and siblings swear that he all of a sudden stood up, began smiling, and said bop bop, and took off running towards the road. Bop bop was his grandpa who died a month prior, and they think that's what he saw in the highway. But they don't think it was his grandpa's spirit. They think it was a demon pretending to be bop bop to get him out there. But about 10 years ago, they bulldozed down that old church, and a new family bought this property and moved in, and this older woman was babysitting her 3-year-old grandson on a regular basis. So on this summer day, they cooked, they played, they watched TV, they were just having a great time together. Around lunch, she goes in the bathroom, and while she's in there, her 3-year-old grandson manages to slip out the door. She comes out the bathroom, she don't see him, she calls his name, he don't answer, so she goes out the front door, and that's where she sees this baby with his arms wide open run into the highway. He was smiling ear to ear when he was hit by a Mack truck right in front of his grandma. She was less than 5 feet behind him when he was hit by that truck, and she was almost hit herself. This poor baby was gone, and there wasn't much left of him after the impact. The truck driver was going the speed limit. He didn't even know he'd hit anything. He glances in a side mirror, and that's where he sees a woman running out of her yard, and she drops down in the middle of the highway, so he thinks she's in trouble. He slams on brakes, turns around, and runs back up to the scene, and that's where he learns he hit a child. They had fenced in that entire yard to make it childproof, and they even had a special lock on the gate, but for some reason the gate was standing wide open. Nobody knows who did it. What's crazy? Grandma sold the property, and on the day she was moving out, she pulled her grandson's cross out the ground, and she was hit and killed by a truck. So back in the late 80s, 2 5-year-old children were seen playing alone out in their yard on the edge of this highway. So the one child said, the other child stood up and said, "There's my Mima," and then he took off running out to the highway. But this one said he didn't see anyone out there, but the other one kept running and he got hit by a car. Another woman who grew up down the road from this said that when she was 6 or 7 years old, she used to hear this tapping on her window late at night, and when she looked, it was a black shadowy figure trying to get her to go out into the road, but she wouldn't go because it was too dark. One time this thing told her that her new cat was out there on the road, so she put on her shoes and coat because she didn't want it to get hit, and right when she got to the door, her mama snatched her up and said, "No, you're not going out there, it's too dangerous," and she stopped her. Her mama probably saved her life. Another man said that while his wife was at work at the hospital on night shift, his twin sons, who were 7, would tell him that they saw something floating around the house and it was trying to get them to come outside and play. He had to put locks on all the doors and windows and build a damn fence around their house that the kids couldn't get through because they were steady trying to go out to that damn road. A girl I went to school with said that when she was getting on the bus one morning, she heard this whiny sound like a kitten, and when she went to lean leaned down in the ditch, that was when a big truck came out of nowhere and almost hit her. She jumped back so hard that she fell in the ditch and got soaking wet, and the truck barely missed her, but when she looked down in the ditch, there were no animals in there. Another little girl who was 8 years old lived on that same road, and she was getting off the school bus one day when a driver flew past the bus and hit her. The driver kept going and didn't even stop to check on her. So the bus driver and the kids all get off and they call 911, and she's airlifted to Wilmington, and she has been disabled ever since. A bad wreck that I personally saw on that road was when I was in 6th grade. This woman comes flying up in a little car behind our bus. That big tractor with all those discs was just a few feet ahead of us, and that was why our bus driver was going so slow. So this woman tries to go around us. She stomps the gas, but when she goes around the bus, another truck is coming in the opposite lane, so she has to swing it back over in between the tractor and the bus. This woman lost control of her car, and she slammed into the back of that tractor and rammed that car up into those discs. The discs ate the front of her car. I mean, they went right on up into the windshield and decapitated her. I had nightmares about that wreck for weeks. So back in the late 80s, one of my distant relatives was on a tractor going out to a field to plow it, and he put his 5-year-old son on his lap to ride the tractor with him while their mama was at home making lunch. The mom would always tell him, be careful with him on the tractor, please don't let go, don't let him fall. And the dad was like, dude, my whole family's been riding tractors forever and we've never had nothing happen. He'll be fine. So as they're going into the field, a big truck came out of nowhere and almost hit him. The father has to pull the tractor off the road and back on, and when he does, the little boy falls off the tractor and ends up going under the disc. He was mangled up. And then this poor man had to go home and tell his wife what happened to their son, and she went all to hell. So needless to say, a lot of really bad things have happened on this highway, and that's why people are so scared to drive on it.
Roommate wanted, female only. This was the title of a Reddit post uploaded almost 10 years ago now. It refers to the title of a Craigslist ad a girl named Amanda had seen while looking for a place to rent. The post consists of her detailed experience. Amanda was browsing the internet when she came across the ad. The listing was for a room in a house for $225 a month, which was pretty cheap for the area. The occupant listed herself as a 23-year-old college student who wasn't comfortable living with any males. Amanda would get her own room and bathroom. The only thing was the Craigslist ad only had one picture. It was a picture of the outside of the house. There were no pictures of the inside. But still interested, Amanda sent an email to the occupant. In less than an hour, she got an email back with all the details and the time to stop by. The time said 8 p.m., past when it would have gotten dark. In the email, the occupant said this was because she worked late. So, that night at 8 p.m., Amanda arrived at the house. She walked up to the front door and was met by a handwritten note that said, "Door broken, use back door." She started walking around towards the back, and as she did, she noticed how unkempt the place looked. The windows were covered in dust, and the grass was way overgrown. She knocked on the back door. An older man opened it. At first, she thought she was at the wrong house, but the guy went on to explain how he was the landlord, and that the occupant asked him to show her around. The post described him as clearly in his 40s, unshaven, and a guy who looked like he lived in his car. A bit hesitant, Amanda stepped inside and allowed the man to give her a tour. Immediately, she noticed the place had no furniture whatsoever. There was only one light on, the light in the kitchen. The landlord would answer questions, but was irritable to keeping lights on for too long. He rushed her around, only letting her look in rooms for a few seconds. They eventually got to one room that the landlord wouldn't open. He said it was the occupant's room and that she wouldn't want them to go in there. As they were heading back to the living room, Amanda noticed a plank nailed across the front door. She tried to get out of there, thanking the owner for the tour and heading back towards the back door. That's when the man perked up and mentioned how he forgot to show her the basement. He explained how it was just recently furnished and would make for a great rec room. He was standing between her and the back door. She felt like she had no other choice. He opened the basement door, saying, "Ladies first," as he motioned her downstairs. Just then, an unrelated car parked outside on the street. At the exact same time, Amanda received a text on her phone. She pretended it was a call and faked a conversation about her friend being outside waiting to pick her up. She quickly excused herself, leaving the back door and now full-on sprinting to her car. When she got home, she called the cops. She tried going back to the Craigslist ad, but it was deleted. It turns out the house had been foreclosed over 6 months earlier. The property was completely abandoned. There was never any real occupant or any real room to rent. The room the man didn't want to show her on the tour turned out to be the room he lived in. But the worst part was the basement. Police found a piece of fishing line at shin level strewn across the stairs about halfway down. There was no furniture down there as the man had said. There was nothing but a pile of old blankets, a broom handle wrapped in leather belts, and a small box with rolls of duct tape. The poster never mentioned if the man was caught or not.
So I just got my first haunted doll story and I'm freaking out. Spooky story time. A follower named Kayla sent me the story and we're gonna call it The Haunted Doll. So Kayla says that she is an avid thrifter. She loves thrift stores, estate sales, yard sales, anything within that realm, she is game. She also says that she loves to collect porcelain dolls, similar to this one. So she went to an estate sale and she said that there was a few porcelain dolls. They were a little bit pricey, but she came across one that she could not say no to. For some reason, this doll was just calling her name. She checked the price, and although it was in an estate sale, it was $75. She does say that vintage porcelain dolls tend to be a little bit more expensive, so she was like, you know what, I'm just gonna bite the bullet. I'm obsessed. She's calling my name. I need it. So Kayla bought the doll and brought her home. She says that at her house, she has about 20 to 25 different porcelain dolls, and they all sit in a designated area. She dusted her new doll down, fixed her hair, got her all nice and ready, and she put her on her shelf. About 2 days later, things started to change. She said that her doll shelf was to the left in her living room. Her TV was straight ahead. She would watch TV, and out of nowhere, she could see a dark shadow just kind of like... She had never seen stuff like that, so she didn't think anything of it until it started to happen more often. She'd be coming from the kitchen to the living room, and again, from the corner of her eye, she could see a dark, black, just huge shadow standing right in the corner. One day she was taking a shower and she hears this loud crash. Freaking out, immediately she grabs a towel, runs out of her restroom. She's looking around, doesn't see anything, goes into the living room, and she sees that all of the dolls that were on the shelf were now on the floor. Some of them were broken. And the only one that was left on the shelf was this new one that she had just purchased at the estate sale. Oh, hell no. She did not let things get worse because something in her told her, get rid of it. This is not right. For the past few days, you've been seeing black shadows, weird things, weird noises, and now this is the biggest red flag. Out of all places, she decides to go to a car wash, disposes of this porcelain doll at the car wash trash can, and everything that was happening before suddenly stopped. She wants to know, do you think there was something attached to the doll? Do you think the doll itself was haunted? What do you guys think? Personally, if my personal collection of things that I love and cherish was getting sold off after I passed, I would be pissed and I would be raising some hell. I think it might be the original owner. What do you guys think? Thank you so much to Caleb for sending me this spooky story. If you guys have any stories that you'd like for me to read, please send them via DM or email, and I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
This paranormal story made my skin crawl. A Reddit user who we'll call Emily had just moved to a brand new apartment in Melbourne, Australia. It was Emily's first time living alone, and the apartments that she moved into were built in the 1930s. And well, according to her story, she goes to work one day, and when she comes home, she goes into the bathroom and sees something strange. A board that had been covering a hole leading to an attic space on the ceiling had fallen to the ground and split in two. Well, Emily picks up the two pieces of the board, and the board's like an inch thick. It would have taken like Bruce Lee level force to break this board. So Emily slowly looks up at this attic space that's now exposed, and she is suddenly frozen stiff with fear. And she's thinking, somebody's got to be up there. But then it occurred to Emily, you know what, maybe my landlord just sent somebody to do some work while I was gone. So she emails her landlord, a little bit annoyed, to ask if anybody had been in her apartment. Pretty quickly, Emily gets an email response from her landlord that just says, please call me as soon as you can. So Emily calls her landlord, the landlord answers, and Emily explains the situation, and Emily's landlord goes, oh, it happened to you too. Apparently this had happened to two tenants before Emily, and the landlord promised to replace the board. About a month later, Emily wakes up around 4 a.m. and her skin is crawling with goosebumps, and she says it felt like somebody was rubbing their hands all over her. And as she's laying there, like experiencing this sensation, everything is dead silent until all of a sudden she hears this sound above her head, and she describes it as sounding like somebody's dragging a sack of potatoes on the floor above her. At this point, Emily's really starting to freak out because this sound doesn't sound like an animal. After about 5 minutes, Emily grabs a cricket bat, gathers her courage, and creeps down the hall to the bathroom, where she looks and finds that that board that the landlord had replaced was again in the floor and broken into. Emily had a sick feeling come over her, and all of a sudden the dragging sound stops, but a new sound begins. It was a whispering sound, and she said it was clear as day, coming from the attic. And it sounded like children's voices, and there was one voice saying over and over, "It's your turn, it's your turn." So Emily dashes out of the bathroom and she flips on every light in the house, just trying to get something to feel normal. She even goes into the living room, turns on the TV, sits down, and tries to calm herself down when suddenly a fuse blows, and her pet bird all of a sudden starts squawking its head off like it's being strangled. This becomes the breaking point. Emily says, screw the bird. She grabs her car keys, runs out of the house, and closes herself in her car until morning. Finally, when the sun comes up, she sees people start going to work, walking their dogs, and she starts to feel a little safe again. And so she gets out of her car, goes back into her house to check things out. She goes to check on her bird. The bird is not in its cage. She finds her bird half drowned in the toilet. She moves out of that apartment and never looks back.
So this is my second time trying to tell this story. I'm not going to do all those cuts and fancy thing that people on TikTok do. I'm just going to tell the story. So when I was 18 or 19, I was with my mom. I'm from a small city in Illinois, southern Illinois, basically. And we were riding around one day and we happened to come across this yard sale. So she wanted to stop and I said, okay, let's go see what they got. So we get there, and you can tell everything that had been laying on the table, everything was basically covered in like a fine layer of dust. So either it was in an attic or a garage or something, I don't know. But I was looking on the tables, and I saw an Ouija board. It was fully intact. It had, on the inside of the box, it had the board and the planchette. So I asked my mom if I could have it, and she said yeah, and so took it home. Fast forward to maybe 6 months. I never opened it, by the way. So fast forward 6 months, I get my own place, I box it up, and I put it in the utility closet. Fast forward another 3 months, I finally remember that I have the Ouija board, so I was already out. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna stop and pick up like this cheap bottle of vodka, and I'm gonna go home and play with the board. So I get home, and remind you, I had stored my box in a utility closet. So I opened up the utility closet, and I guess the water heater that was in it had leaked or something. But I had it stored in just a regular cardboard box. Completely soaked the box and everything that was in it, including the Ouija board. Completely warped the board. It was ruined. I couldn't use it, so I had no choice but to throw it away. Well, next day I call out maintenance to have them come look at the water heater because I don't want it to continue to leak. And they come out. They open up the utility closet, they poke around, look around. They said that they couldn't find a leak. So, I don't know, was it some sort of intervention or something? Because like I said, I had a bottle of liquor and it was ready to go.
Okay, y'all, so I'm gonna retell the Catman story. A lot of y'all have probably heard this story, but my old account is gone, so retelling it. So when I was like 14, I lived in Jamaica with my mom, and one night it was really late, like 2 or 3 in the morning. I was in the living room watching TV. My mom was asleep, and I'm hearing what sounds like cats fighting outside. So I'm just like, I wanted to see 2 cats. Like, that was my entire goal, bro. I thought that I was gonna see 2 cats fight. So I go out onto the veranda, which is like a porch. The way how the house is set up, I'm on the 2nd floor of the home. There's a first floor, and then the yard is out there. In our yard, we had 5 mango trees. 4 of them was on the right side of the house, and 1 of them was on the left side. So I'm looking at the left side of the house from the second floor veranda. I thought it was 2 cats fighting, but I was wrong. There was 1 little white cat there, and it was like, the sounds it was making was like it was in pain. I'm thinking either the motherfucker is gonna give birth, or it's like something's wrong with it. So then the cat starts getting into a stretching position. You know the position that cats do when like they just woke up, like they got their butt in the air and the front part of them is like stretched all the way out with their hands like that? That's what it was doing. I don't like, maybe I was just bored, maybe I was just in awe, but I didn't stop looking. Like I was just staring at it as this is happening. And then the fucking face of the creature begins to turn upside down. Like, I know when y'all are visualizing some shit like that, you think of the head doing a 360. Like, no. The face of the creature began to turn upside down. The face opened up like a flower, like peeling back. And mind you, it's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Street lights. I'm in Jamaica. I know the drill. Once I seen the shit starting to stand up, like stand upright, I went back into the house. Like it had been growing in size and changing and all this shit, but when it started to get up, I was like, yeah, I need to not be here. Walked back into the house and I just acted like I didn't see anything. And then maybe like 2-3 minutes later, I looked through my living room window because the living room looked into the right side of the house with the 4 mango trees. So I'm looking through that window and I see a man in a white wife beater, a dark skinned skinny man, white wife beater, walk out of my yard and off into the road. Once again, it's 2-3 in the morning. Nobody's in my yard, bro. There's nobody in the yard. And after I seen that shit, I was sick for like 3 days. I was sick, like weak, can't eat, fever, chills, like the craziest weakness I've ever felt. Like weak, like I can't do anything type shit. And I can't keep anything down. Like it was horrible. And when I first told this story, a lot of people said to me, like, you got sick because you were not supposed to see that. And it knows that you saw it. So, listen, I just know I'm not looking for catfights anymore, bro.
I am trying to process what just happened. I just had the most terrifying experience at the Grand Canyon with my boyfriend, and I just wanted to come on here and talk about what happened and see if anyone else has experienced something like this, because I'm really freaked out. So we were at the Grand Canyon and we decided to stay there to stargaze because the stars are amazing there. There's no light pollution. So we were sitting by the rim. We were sitting there in the dark and we couldn't see anything. And my boyfriend just had this awful feeling that something bad was going to happen. And that's not like him at all. He never feels like that. Even at night, he's not scared of the dark. He just had this awful feeling and we needed to go back to the car like right then. So we started walking back down the trail. It was about a 20-minute walk back to the car and pitch black through a bunch of trees. Out of nowhere, we heard a whistle behind us from the trees and there was nobody behind us. We pointed our flashlight at the trees because we thought maybe a person was hiding in there. Nobody was there. We decided to pick up our pace a little bit to get back to the car faster. And my boyfriend, he started panicking. He just felt like we were going the wrong way. He was trying to get us to go backwards towards where the whistling sound came from, which was not the right way. That was the opposite direction of our car, but he thought that's where our car was. And I had to convince him that we were on the right path. So eventually, after walking down the trail, we ended up seeing the visitor center and we knew we parked near there. And my boyfriend, for some reason, he just wanted to go out into the dark area. He thought that's where we were parked. But I knew that's not where it was. I knew we were near the visitor center, but he wanted to walk like the opposite direction of where we were. So I convinced him that that was not the right way and we needed to go the other way. So we eventually found the parking lot where our car was, and we were walking towards our car, and out of nowhere, we heard this awful panting noise, and it sounded like it was right in front of us. We were pointing the flashlight everywhere. There was nothing there. We couldn't see anything. And the noise, it just sounded like it was like running at us. We then like ran towards the visitor center.
So after we collected ourselves at the visitor center, we just had to go back to the car because there was nobody around. Nobody was there to help us. So we just had to run towards the car. That's all we could do. And we went back to the car. The noise was gone. There was nothing. And we are convinced that there was like something demonic or something there. I don't know. I'm really scared.
What if your sleep paralysis experience went into the real world and hurt you? That's what tonight's True Scary Story is about, okay? So buckle. My submitter's name is Danny, and Danny has had sleep paralysis since she was 12 years old, and it went until she was 17 years old, and you're gonna find out why it stopped when she was 17. By the way, Danny did say that I could tag her, so she will be in the description, and she will be in the comments, so if you have any comments or questions, drop them there. Here's the scary thing though, all of her sleep paralysis experiences consisted of entities that looked like Slender Man and Hat Man. Just scarier versions. She said that at this early age, she was having sleep paralysis every single night. And every single night she would have sleep paralysis, the next day her mental health would deteriorate. And this would happen quite often. She also said that if she ever watched scary movies or anything supernatural, paranormal, it would also trigger it. She said she only saw Hat Man like once or twice, but she said Slender Man is where it got real, where it was scary and violent. She did say that she lived next to a cemetery and that may be what triggered it, but I don't know. So Danny said that her bedroom door was always closed and she was always alone because she shared a room with her sister, but her sister was always sleeping over at her boyfriend's house. She would fall asleep and then she would feel a presence in her room and then her heart would start to race and beat and she would start sweating and she knew what was about to happen. If you've had sleep paralysis before, you know this feeling. She said that this would always happen around 2 or 3 a.m. and the only reason that she knew this is because she slept facing her clock. So when she would open her eyes during the sleep paralysis, she could see what time it was. She said that every single time it happened, she would wake up, she would open her eyes, and in the corner of her eye, she would see Hat Man and she would look over and he would be slowly creeping towards the bed towards her and he would make this clicking sound as he would do it. He would walk around to the end of her bed, he would sit at the end of her bed, and then he would just take his hat off and he would just smile at her. He was completely black except for the big grin and these sharp white teeth. She said that during this incident, when this would happen, she could not move, she could not scream, she could not do anything, obviously. But this would happen for hours, literally. She would be in this state for like 2 to 3 hours because it would happen till like 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning. Holy shit. And the whole time, he would just be sitting on her bed, smiling at her. Around 5 or 6 a.m., he would get up, put his hat back on, and he would walk out the door. She said Hat Man would come visit her like 3 or 4 times a week, but she said Slender Man, on the other hand, would visit her less, but this experience was much worse. With Slender Man, it was the same experience. She would wake up, her heart racing, all that stuff, but different. He would try to scare her. He would first grab the door handle and he would rattle the door handle, just then the door would slowly open. And then she would see this tall, slender, black figure just start creeping towards her bed. He had bright red eyes, sharp white teeth, and he was so tall that he had to crouch underneath her high ceilings. He had super long arms, and they were so long they hit the floor, and he had these sharp, long fingernails that would just drag on the floor. So when he would walk to her bed, it was very similar as Hat Man because he would make that same clicking noise when he would walk to her bed, just that. He would get to the end of her bed and his bright red eyes would grow bigger and his sharp white teeth and his smile would get bigger. And then he would just slowly crawl on her bed. He would then get right on top of her and he would just get right in her face and he would start screaming in her face with saliva and spit just coming out of his mouth. Then put one hand on her chest and just press on it so that she would struggle to breathe. And she couldn't move, so she couldn't do anything about it. He would then take his other hand and he would scratch her arms and legs as he was screaming in her face. He would then slowly crawl backwards with that same grin on his face and he would exit her door and leave the door open. She said that this would normally last for about 2 hours, like 1 or 2 hours, and it would always happen around 3 a.m. It was shorter than the Hat Man, but way more terrifying. She would then snap out of it and be struggling to breathe, coughing, panting, covered in sweat. A bedroom door would be open and she would have scratches on her arms and on her legs. But in November of 2017, her nan passed away, and she was incredibly close to her nan. She had never seen a picture of her nan when she was younger. She had only seen what she looked like as an older woman. But the night she passed away, Danny didn't know that she had passed away, and she started to get sleep paralysis, and it was Slender Man. And Slender Man started to crawl on her bed, as he does. So as soon as it gets to the part where he starts screaming in her face, she sees this bright white light appear, and then this woman comes down. And this woman looks exactly like her nan, except for like 60 years younger. She had ginger hair, hair and sort of like a beehive updo, and she was wearing a white gown. She looks so beautiful. And as soon as she sees what Slender Man is doing, she gets right in his face and she says, you will not visit her anymore. You will not scare her anymore. You are banished from this house and you will not bother her or the rest of our family. And then she said that Slender Man looks scared. He gets up immediately and he just skedaddles right out of the room. This woman then looks at her and smiles and says, everything is going to be okay. I'm with Grandpa now. She said that although her nan had passed and she had known that it was her and that she had passed at this point, she woke up just feeling lighter and brighter. After she gets up, she goes downstairs to meet with her mom, and her mom looks at her and says, look, I have some bad news. Nan passed away. She was 98 years old, so she lived a long life. And Danny just says, I know. And she tells her about the sleep paralysis incident. Her mom knew that she had suffered from it. She also tells her mom what she saw, how she looked, like how much younger she looked and what she looked like. And her mother was like, that is exactly to the T what she looked like when she was about 30 years old. So she had the ginger hair. She used to wear her hair up like that all the time. Because remember, Danny had only seen her grandmother as being like a very elderly woman. So she had gray hair. She was older. She had never seen her like that before. And ever since that incident, she had never had sleep paralysis ever again. And she ends it by saying, my nan saved me. She protected me and she still continues to protect me. I don't know why I'm getting emotional right now. She says that she's not religious, but ever since then, she has become more religious because of her experience. Now she believes way more in the afterlife and on a lighter side of the afterlife.
So to everybody telling they scary stories about spirits and stuff like that, let me tell y'all about the time I came face to face with a mimic from the theater that I volunteer at. So boom, listen, I'm gonna do this all in one take. So I volunteer at a community theater, and that motherfucker haunted. There's something in that basement that does not like me, and I do not like it. I stay away from the basement. I can't stay in the basement. I refuse to go into the basement alone. I would never go into the basement alone. Why? Because that thing that is in the basement makes me feel like it wants to hurt me. I don't have no problems with it, and I stay away from it. He has his problems with me. I don't know what they are, but, you know, it might be because I'm black. Anyway, so there's one night we were staying late from rehearsal. There was me, the stage manager, and my two best friends. So I'll name Madison and Jacob. Girl, hey, how y'all doing? I'll tell y'all in the video. Y'all can confirm that this shit happened. Okay, so me, Madison, and the stage manager, and Jacob, we're all having a kiki. We're cleaning the stage. We're sweeping and mopping and doing shit. We're having a fun time. We're just being. We end up talking about the ghost stories that they tell during the ghost tour, and the story about the lavender lady in the theater. She comes up. Now they tell the story pretty prevalent. Prevalent is the word? I don't know, but they tell the story a lot. Now, as the story about the lavender lady going on, the stage manager, something reminded her that she needed something from the basement, and she asked Jacob. She's like, "Hey, Jacob, I need something from the basement. Can you go downstairs to grab it?" Jacob's like, "Hell no, I'm not going down there by myself. What if there's an axe murderer?" That's exactly what he said. I swear to God, that's exactly what he said. And then she was like, "Well, take Marquis." And he was like, "Well, Marquis," I was like, "No, I'm not going down there. You know I don't like that basement. That basement don't like me. I'm not going down them stairs." Long story short, Jacob ended up bribing me with a damn tequila sunrise, and I ended up going anyway. Like a dummy. So we end up going downstairs, and we end up finding what we're looking for. And as we are about to leave the damn prop room, we see this figure standing in the doorway. We both look, and in unison, I swear on my granny ashes, we say, "Ow!" at the same time. Because it was just standing there, solid figure. It dips off, it disappears. We run up the stairs. We both out of breath. We sitting here talking about some, yeah, bitch, we're not going back downstairs. No. They ask what happened. We tell Maddie what happened, and Madison's like, what are you going to do if it follows you? I'm like, I wish this motherfucker would follow me. And that's my problem right there. I sat here and said, I wish this motherfucker would follow me. Yep, I do too much of this. I need to learn how to stop. So we end up talking our shit, leaving. I end up home. Get home. It's the dead of fucking winter. Julian's at work. My fiance's at work. So I get in the house. First red flag that oh, hell no. See, even talking about this shit scaring me. So I get home. First red flag should have been my fucking bedroom door was open. I don't never leave my bedroom door open. I have a cat that likes to claw stuff up. He's not allowed in here without supervision. Second red flag, he was still in the living room. That's how I know. That's how I should have known something was wrong. Bedroom door was open. My cat was still in the living room. He wasn't in my bedroom. That should have been the first red flag. So I hear my fiance's voice come out of my bedroom, and he's like, "Hey, babe, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, babe, I'm doing good. I'm gonna come give you a kiss, but I gotta use the bathroom first." I go to the bathroom first, and it's still talking to me. The voice is still talking to me. I don't see where the voice is coming from, but I know it's coming from my bedroom. So I'm in the bedroom, and I'm talking. He's talking. It's talking. Whatever the fuck it goes by. It's still having a conversation with me. We're literally, I'm like enthralled in this conversation, having a full intellectual conversation, explaining my day, how it went. I even told him about the mishap one of my residents had. And I kid you not, as I crack the bathroom door open, because like I can't hear because it starts to get a little muffled. So I'm like, babe, I'm gonna crack the bedroom door. Hold on, say that again. I open the bathroom door just a little bit. And I'm so deep in my phone on my phone on Royal Match. I'm not trying to plug them, I swear to God. I'm playing the little Royal Match game, and I swear to God, I see the door open a little bit more than how I had it. And as I'm like talking, I see something like stand in the doorway. And I'm thinking that my fiance came to be fucking be a fucking weirdo, because like we play like that. So I'm thinking it's him. But I swear to God on my granny ashes, when I looked up, this creature, this being, this entity, whatever you want to call it, when I looked up, it had my fiance's face. But the only difference about my fiance that it didn't it had red and gold eyes. I swear on my granny ashes, bro, on my altar to Aphrodite, it had red and gold eyes, and it was looking at me. I couldn't do shit but scream. I legitimately screamed. Like it was a full final girl scream. Like it was just. It was bad. Like it was terrifying. Like I felt like my heart fell out of my ass. Like it was terrifying. And as like I scream, it runs. And then my fiance just so happens to come in, and he's like running towards me because like he hears me screaming. He thinks something wrong. He's like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I'm like, that was not you? Was that not you? Oh my God, was that not you? And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Bro, there was something in the house, man. There was something in the house." Girl, I finished up using the bathroom. I had him check the house to make sure that I was not alone, like to make sure like it was gone. I called Madison after that to have her come to cleanse my house. I was so like I couldn't even focus on doing it myself. I had Madison come to my house and cleanse it, and I will tag her in the video, and she will literally confirm that this has happened. Like I was like, and even just thinking about it, I'm like, just thinking about it, and then like. It was like what really was like the scariest part about it was it wasn't like a masked shadow. It was like a solid human being. Like if you could see me, like that's what it was. And I did not sleep that night. Like I remember I didn't sleep that night. I ain't go, not for legal reasons. This is a joke, but I took one of Juju's Adderalls to go to work the next morning because I did not go to sleep. Like, it was so that was the most terrifying shit I have ever been through. But yeah, that's my scary story. That's my story with the paranormal. But I have a couple more. I could tell y'all about the time I had a dream that I danced with a demon.
The stories that just keep coming from the Appalachian Mountains are crazy, and I've got another one for you. Creepy story time. The story came to me a few days ago. I'm not sure if they want to remain anonymous, so I'm just going to keep it that way. They said this happened to them when they were about 16 years old in 2010. They said it was just a regular day like any other, and around evening time after dinner, their mom asked them to drive their brother to a friend's house. It was about 10 minutes away. So they agreed, drove him there, and then headed straight back home. Now, they say, mind you, this is a road that they have driven down for years and years, many, many times. And nothing strange has ever happened like this. So they're on a straightaway and they're about to go down a steep hill, and then they see it. She describes it as a creature with pale, ashy gray skin, long limbs, 7 or 8 feet tall with red glowing eyes. Why? They are absolutely terrified, and they pass by and then slow down on their brakes and check in the rearview mirror to see if it's still there, just to make sure their eyes aren't playing tricks on them. And yeah,
it's still standing there. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. They said that you could see through it. They said it looked the same going towards it and then looking back at it through the rearview mirror. Some stories I hear, it's like 1 second it's there and then the next it's gone. It's like, is this thing fading in and out of existence? Is it from an alternate timeline? They mentioned that they've discovered that people often refer to creatures described like this as either wendigos or skinwalkers. I'm telling you, there have been so many people describing such a similar creature, it's unbelievable. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you live around the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia, have you ever seen anything like this? And don't forget to follow for more creepy story time.
I live in Oregon, and a friend of mine was having her bachelorette party at a cabin in the woods at the base of a very well-known mountain. I was looking forward to going. A lot of people I care about were going to be on that trip, and I thought it sounded like a really fun weekend just to get away and be in nature. And the first thing that happened when I left my house and I was just on the outskirts of town, I got such a strong feeling to turn around and grab some cleansing tools like sage, Palo Santo, whatever I had on hand. And it was so strong, I turned the car around, went home. My husband's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. I just had to use the bathroom and I don't want to use the gas station." Totally fed him a line because I didn't want him to get worried. It was a really pleasant drive up there, a couple of hours. You're at least in the forest for, I'd say, 45 to 50 minutes before you find this house. This house. As soon as I pull up into the garage, I immediately just have this overwhelmingly heavy feeling that I really can't explain. 2 other people had arrived. They were there taking care of a lot of the organizational details. And I walked in, and my 2 friends are standing in the kitchen here and here. These are pictures of the property. And I walk in, and automatically, just with my sensitivities, I am like, there is something up there that is funky, and I don't like it, and I don't want to go near it. I feel like I am being stared at, and it is highly dark, highly uncomfortable. And so my 2 friends in the kitchen are like, "Hey, Meg, how's it going? We're glad you're here." I'm like, "Yeah, how are you guys doing?" They're like, "We're great." And I'm like, "Yeah, other than the thing that's up those stairs that's been staring at you the whole time." And they were like, "Oh my God, we were waiting for you to get here because we just had such a weird feeling and we're freaked out and we wanted to know what you thought," because they know I've got like sensitivities or whatever. I walked up the stairs and I got to about this spot right here, and I stopped because I literally felt like an energetic wall, like, do not go any further. My friend said, "That's really weird. That's literally as far as we went to before you got here." And we were, they were just checking out the house, and they went up into that weird little loft attic area, and they were like, "Nope, no further." This is the top of the stairs right here. And if you look way down in this loft area, there's a little door with a crawl space, and it was shut when we got there. As people started arriving, we were having fun joking, and one of the women went up there, and we were talking about how creepy it was, and she said, "Was the door open when you guys went up there?" The crawl space door had been opened, and none of us had been up there. So that night, we're just kind of settling into the house, settling into the weekend, trying to figure out what's on the agenda, trying to have a good time. But if you're sensitive, you can just tell from these pictures. The place just had a creepy vibe. Those 2 same friends are sleeping in this room, and I am sleeping down here, downstairs, alone on a pull-out couch. First thing we notice is the incredible amount of dead insects all over the floor and even in the sheet. That night, one of my friends had her electronics go crazy at 3 a.m. I felt such a heavy layer of darkness. The first night I tried to go to sleep downstairs here on that pull-out couch, I felt like things were staring at me, circling me. I was this close to getting up and leaving in the middle of the night with a 2-hour drive home, rolling in at 5 a.m. with my husband like, "What are you doing?" But I got this very clear message: you need to stay and you need to help hold up some kind of energetic barrier. I had a dream when I eventually fell asleep that the entire property was surrounded by fire, and the fire couldn't penetrate this weird line that we were all trying to hold. So I was like, fine, okay, I guess I will stay in this freaky ass house. The next morning, we're all hanging out on the balcony and talking, having breakfast, having coffee, and people start to share their experiences. People were touched. People staying in the upstairs bedroom in the bunk beds had water dripped onto their faces, coming out of nowhere, and there were no leaks in the ceiling. It wasn't raining that weekend. Later that day, when most of the crew was playing yard games, like down here in the grass, one of the women was hanging out over here, and there was a deck of cards that literally got blown, and the cards were like flung into her face. I have no idea how that happened. At this point, I am getting so drained physically and feeling so sick, I need to go lie down. I'm alone in the house again, but I'm watching everybody from outside these windows where I'm at. Gosh, I can't point. And at this point, I'm just praying, like, I'm here for a reason. These are people that I really care about and love, and I do not want to leave them here because I feel like I can be more helpful trying to hold off whatever this thing is. I did eventually run out to the corner store to test and make sure that the physical symptoms I was experiencing were really tied to the house and not just something going on with me. And as soon as I left the house, I felt so much better. But I had to come back. People were having personality changes while at the house. Like they would start to withdraw, go take a shower, try and like snap out of it because they just felt something come over them. What I was picking up on primarily that kind of like lived in that upstairs loft area was something that was not nor had ever been human. This sounds really crazy because I've had run-ins with some really, really dark, start with the D word kind of entities. This wasn't even that. It almost felt like not from here, if you catch my drift. But it was, what I saw in my mind's eye was almost like a spidery looking thing. And it's interesting because another woman who was there told me that they saw that a spidery looking image of this big nasty thing like crawl from up in this main area down the stairs into the loft area where we were sleeping. And what's odd is that the safe places in the house would change depending on the time of day. It's like the rooms would just start to feel off. Another person said they were almost picking up on the presence of a man, like an older man. I wasn't picking up on a person, dead or alive, definitely a thing. The second night, one of my friends and I were just so uncomfortable about the idea of going to sleep that we just stayed up kind of deliriously talking to each other until, God, it must have been close to 4 a.m. just to not be asleep and unconscious in that environment. What's so weird and actually kind of miraculous if you think about it is that the bride was not affected. She was the only one out of all of us who had no idea what was going on because she was in her soon-to-be-wed splendor. And also, this particular person has an incredible amount of spiritual protection around her. So we were all really grateful for that, and we'd kind of like whisper about what happened to you last night and this happened to me in the bathroom earlier, and we were all just kind of keeping it out of the realm of awareness of the bride, fortunately. By the last morning, I'll never forget, one of my friends had set up a beautiful create-your-own crepe kind of buffet line, and we were all sitting down around at breakfast, trying to eat, and just feeling so uncomfortable, ready to get the heck out of there. Someone said, "So you picking up on anything, Megan?" And it's interesting because at that moment, I felt just this overwhelming cloud, almost like darkness from every angle just starting to swoop in. And I said, I think it's time to go. The way everybody collectively pushed back from this table and popped up and got up and grabbed their stuff and started hauling ass out of there, it was like a scene in a movie. Other guests had weird experiences. I checked the book, paused to read. If anybody knows who this was, I would love to talk to you about your experience. This one's a little weird. I think some dude had a freaky experience and then leaned into the weirdness and hopefully just exaggerated because they didn't know what to make of it. We all stood outside of that house and we held hands in a circle and I kind of led everybody through a grounding and protective and clearing exercise because it was so vile. The husband-to-be was actually having his stag party down the road and they came over because they heard whispers and rumors about what was happening to us that weekend and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're going to run in and we're going to take care of it." When they saw the look on our faces and they heard me say absolutely nobody is going into that house, they decided not to go in. I got in my car and was completely silent and white-knuckled my grip on the steering wheel until the tree line broke about an hour later and I was getting closer to home. I burst into tears and started sobbing because up until that point, I had never faced anything that dark or malevolent in my life. A few of us called each other after to process what had happened. It was wild.
So I have another spooky story for you. This one follows an old woman whose home is about to go into foreclosure. So our story begins at an old Victorian home in California. This house is massive and it's very valuable at this point in time. The house belonged to an 80-year-old woman named Marion Rayburn who had grown up in the house and whose family had owned the house for generations. Sadly, Marion's husband had gotten sick, and in order to pay for his hospital bills, which were astronomical, she decided to refinance the house. Now, because she refinanced the house, she had to start making payments on it. Payments that she couldn't afford because she was also paying off these exorbitant hospital bills at the same time. So her house went into foreclosure, and the house was quickly swooped up by a greedy investment banker turned house flipper who had intentions to sell the house at a massive profit. Now, on the day in question, Marion Rayburn was sitting on the porch in her rocking chair as she was famously known to do. This is when Louis, the investment banker turned house flipper, shows up to the property with his wife. There's a moving truck parked outside of the house, and they are there to evict Mrs. Rayburn. Now, Mrs. Rayburn is calmly sitting on the porch, and she just explained what I did earlier in the video, which is that she can't afford to pay her house payment because she's also paying off hospital bills. But Louis, the investor, doesn't give a damn. He sees dollar signs when he sees this house, and he thinks it's time for Mrs. Rayburn to go. Now, his wife is standing beside him. He convinced her to leave her job so they could go into business together, and this proved to be a pretty successful thing for the pair. They made a ton of money doing this, and sadly, Louis had gotten greedy and did not care who he started to hurt in the process. So while the trio is talking, things become acrimonious between Louis and the old woman. The old woman is stating that all she needs is a little bit more time, and that her husband's passed away, and this is a very hard time for her. Again, Louis does not give a damn. He's ready to own this house, sell it, and make a quick buck. He tells the woman that it's time for her to go because he's ready to finally own this house. Now this is when Miss Rayburn tells him something that would send chills up his wife's spine. She looks Louis dead in the eyes and says, "I see this house as a family heirloom. It's been in my family for generations, and I have intentions of it staying in my family for generations." Then she finishes the conversation staring directly into Louis' soul, it feels, and states that he will never own this home. It doesn't matter what he does. And then she proceeds to walk off the porch, dignified, gets into the car that's waiting for her, and follows the moving truck off the property, never to be seen or heard from again. Now at this point, Louis is elated. He's not thinking of anything else but getting into this house, fixing it up, and selling it. His wife, on the other hand, is a little more spooked. There's something about the old woman and the way she spoke to Louis that made her think this wasn't over yet. And this is when the problems would ensue for the pair. Now, Louis wasted no time wiping the memory of Mrs. Rayburn from this house. He got in there, gutted the place, put in new carpets, put in new flooring, fixed the appliances, and he was ready to show it to his first set of customers. But when the customers came and they walked in the door, the chandeliers on the ceiling started shaking, and the house started to feel really cold as though the AC was on. Now, this was the middle of the fall, so the AC was in fact not on. Louis had no explanation for the chandelier, so the couple seeing this left, never returned. Now, Louis didn't get discouraged by this. He decided that maybe the home just wasn't for them, and he bought another set of people in. This time when the couple walked in, though, it smelled like there was rot all through the house. He checked everywhere, but couldn't identify the source of the smell. The couple was getting queasy at this point and decided it was time to call it quits. So they left the house, never to be seen or heard from again. Now, Louis at this point is starting to feel some kind of way, but not enough to stop showing this home. So he decides to bring in another set of people. And this time, as they walk inside of the house, there's water everywhere, all over the floor. Overnight, it appears as though the pipes busted. And as a result, the couple seeing this and realizing that this is a ton of money already down the drain, decided that it was time to go. Now, Louis is perplexed at this point. He's wondering what's going on with this house. The inspectors had been there. They had done all the necessary repairs. Things looked good after the inspection ended, and he had also had another set of inspectors come in to check on those inspectors. Everything looked great on paper, so why all of a sudden were they now starting to have these problems? It didn't make sense. But Louis decided to keep showing the house, and couple after couple kept coming in, and couple after couple kept leaving. Nobody was interested in the massive problems that this home had inside of it. And at this point, Louis was in the hole with all of the money he spent on repairs, and his wife was starting to get fed up with it. In fact, she was more than fed up with it, and she made Louis an ultimatum. Either you quit with this house and you sell it to whoever the next buyer is, or you lose me. Now, Louis wasn't a dummy. He loved his wife more than he loved his business, thankfully, but Louis was still convinced that he could turn a profit on this house that had already taken so much money from the couple. His wife, though, was resolute in her decision. You sell this house to the next buyer, or you lose me. And he decided that he would take the former as opposed to the latter. Now, he was being a little sneaky and he decided to try one more couple, but when they went inside, Louis decided to open the windows so he could show them that they could get nice air, and the windows busted. Not just one, but the whole row of windows, which was uncanny. So the couple, seeing this and thinking the old house was just kind of creepy anyways, decided they would leave. So his wife, knowing that he was probably up to his old tricks, decided to do a little pop-up at the house. So when she arrives at the property, Louis is standing there, pissed off because glass is broken everywhere, and he turns around. He's got this really shit-eating grin on his face because he knows he shouldn't be there showing this house. So his wife looks at him and she's like, "Look, last one." Now, as they're standing here having this little argument, there's a couple who comes up riding their bikes. Louis' wife sees the couple and she puts on her best salesman face and she's like, "Hey, we're selling this house, offering a great discount." Now the couple is hesitant. They're like, "Hey, no, We're just here to see this house. We couldn't afford anything this big. We just started grad school and we don't have jobs secured aside from what the university is paying us in scholarships. Now, Louie's wife is like, you know what? I'll tell you what. Why don't you just go in, take a look around, and if you like it, we can sit and talk about it. Now, the couple, they do want to see inside. They've always been curious about it, especially the woman. And so they walk around and they love the house. They get inside and Louie notices for the first time that there's nothing happening inside of the house. So as the couple walks through the home, the woman is absolutely falling in love with it. And she tells her husband it would be so nice if they could afford something like this. So Louie's wife is like, well, I'll tell you what, you got $1? And the couple is looking at her like she's crazy. And the guy's like, yeah, I got $1. And she's like, all right, give me $1. And we'll consider this the bill of sale for the house. I'll send you the deed. You are now homeowners. Now the couple is shocked. They're in absolute disbelief. They never thought in any of their years that they would become the homeowners of $1 million home at this point for the exorbitant cost of $1 whole. And so while they're sitting there, just in awe of their luck for that day, Louie's wife tells him that they need to go outside to the car, get the paperwork since it was already drawn up, and get this house sold. Now Louie, he's huffing and puffing a little bit, but his wife seems really happy, and he decides that if she's happy, he's happy. Happy wife, happy life. So Louie and his wife go to the car, and this is when the couple, who are left inside of the house at this point, start having a conversation. The guy is talking to his wife, and he's just so happy he could make her happy by getting her this house of her dreams. And the woman, who's teary-eyed at this point, looks up at her husband and says, I just wanted to go inside Grandma's house one more time. I grew up here as a kid, and I always wanted to know what it looked like after she moved and what they did with it. So at the end, it seems like Mrs. Rayburn got the last laugh. Not only did Louie go into debt trying to fix that house, the same debt he didn't care that she had gotten into trying to save her husband, but he never owned the house, and it ended up being the heirloom she desired for her family. Now, what's odd is that as Louie's wife was walking to the car to get the paperwork, she noticed that there was an old rocking chair on the porch that appeared to be moving. Now, come to find out, 2 weeks after Mrs. Rayburn had gotten evicted from the home, she passed away and died. And Louie's wife likes to think that that was her spirit who connected her granddaughter with her former house, and that helped her get the last laugh on Louie. Anyways, though, I want to know what you guys are thinking about this story. Do you think this was sheer coincidence, or do you think it was the ghost of Mrs. Rayburn? Anyways, drop your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you guys in my next video.
When I was young, my parents bought 130 acres to build a house, and then my mom decided that she wanted to decorate that house with antique furniture, and that's where we messed up. We didn't live there long. We started seeing some like shadow figure outside the front door, and my family didn't really believe in ghosts, so none of us really said anything about it until probably like a year later. One of us in the family was like, okay, does anybody else see this outside? Like, I keep seeing it past the window. Everybody in the family was like, oh my gosh, yes, I see it, but I thought I was crazy. The lady that owned the land before us, her name was Lucille, so of course my dad named her Lucille, and we all just refer to her as Lucille now. But we were all like, you know what, she seems nice, she minds her own business, she stays outside, no big deal, just leave her alone. Until I got pregnant. I was 17, so I still lived with my parents, and she decided to welcome herself inside. She would stay very close to me. She was always at every corner I was. I would take a shower, and I could see her out of the corner of my eye, standing in the doorway, watching me every time I showered, the whole time I was pregnant. No big deal, whatever. Watching after me, being nice. And then I gave birth. Still, no big deal. She was next to me in the baby. I thought maybe she was just a sweet ghost. And then one day, I laid my baby down, I sat the camera up, and I went and took a shower, and I was watching the camera while I took a shower, and I saw her laying in the crib next to him. So I ran out the bathroom, and I was like, look, girl, too much, too far, you need to go. You gotta leave. And she listened. She was very sweet. She listened. She moved upstairs to a spare room and didn't bother anybody else, but she would stand in the window and just watch everybody. Literally everybody knows about her. Delivery people, lawn care people, like literally everybody knows about Lucille. Then we ended up moving, and I never saw her again until now.
I got a story submission from a guy that used to work as a paramedic in the Appalachian Mountains, and it absolutely rattled me. He said the things that happened to him this night he still can't explain, and it still really bothers him to this day. To protect his identity, we will call him Jim. But Jim worked in a very, very small, remote area of the Appalachian Mountains. Because the area that Jim worked in was so remote, it didn't require a big station. His station was very small, just 2 bays and only 1 ambulance. It was just him and one other partner working a 24-hour shift, and This time it was 3 a.m. His partner was asleep. He said it was a very slow night. They had only received one other call earlier in the day, so he was just doing some charting and some paperwork. And then out of nowhere, he just heard this super loud banging on the ambulance bay doors. Jim said that this banging was very frantic, very heavy, and it was obviously someone that needed help. So he jumped up and opened the ambulance bay door, but nobody was there. He shone his flashlight around a little bit to check and see if he saw any cars, any people, looked down at the gravel to see if he could see any footsteps, but he saw nothing, just a fog, he said, that was kind of rolling down through the mountains. At this point, he kind of chalked it up to maybe his mind was playing tricks on him because he had been up for so long. So he just closed the door, went back inside, and sat back down to finish his charting. But that's when he heard banging coming louder this time from the side entrance door. He's like, okay, there is obviously someone out here. So he jumps up, slings open the door, and again, there's nothing. But as soon as he's getting ready to like go outside and see if someone's like playing tricks on them or whatever, his radio starts crackling on the table inside. He goes over and grabs it. At first, it's just that staticky like radio crackle. But then he hears a voice very quietly say, "Help me." He responds back and he's like, "Who is this? What do you like? What's going on?" Thinking that it might be like another paramedic from another station. But then the voice comes back on and says, "They don't want you here." He is so confused at this point because usually this radio is used for like when dispatch calls in to send them out to run a call. He tries to like radio in multiple times to find out what this voice was that needs help because he's a paramedic and obviously he wants to go help if someone's in distress. He eventually wakes up his friend and he's like, "Dude, something is going on. Someone was calling in on the radio saying that they didn't want us here, that they needed help." His friend was like, "Okay, let's just call dispatch and have them see where this call originated from because they keep a record of all calls." So they call dispatch and dispatch is like, "There's no record of any calls coming in within the last 3 hours to this station." Jim's friend thinks he's crazy at this point and is like, "You know what, dude, I'm just gonna go out and like check the surrounding area and see what's going on." Jim's like, "I'm not staying in here alone, dude. I'm gonna go out there with you." So they go out with their flashlights to see what's going on in the woods. Again, they find nothing. Except things get really weird when they go back to the side door to get back into the station and the door is locked. Jim said his partner just like froze in horror and finally was like, "Okay, I believe you. Something odd is going on." They have to go around to the other side of the station to push up the ambulance bay doors to get inside. At this point, they're thinking there's an intruder in here. They go inside and they check everywhere, under the beds, in the bathroom. Again, this is a very small station and nobody was there. In the weeks following this incident, Jim was like, "I need more answers. Like, I'm not crazy. Something happened to me." He starts asking around and doing some research and finds out that about 2 miles from that station where he was back in the 70s, a hiker went missing and never returned. They were never able to find this hiker's body, and it's just a missing persons case. This is a very, very eerie story, and I honestly don't know what to think. Leave in the comments what you think this could have been, if you have any weird experiences like this, and if you want more stories, then just follow along.
This is a haunted house that she stayed in, and she's going massively viral on Facebook because she's telling a story about how her and her family members were tormented by some type of spirits inside of this house. On FB, she goes by J Monroe. She was driving past this house, so she posted the video to Facebook and started to share her experience. Watch this.
Y'all look at it. What in the insidious shit is that? The blood of Jesus.
In a Facebook post, she said, "Not trying to stop anybody's hustle, but please do not rent this house. This house is haunted. We moved in that house when I was 16 years old, and we moved out of it 8 months later due to the most craziest and horrifying we started to hear and witness. My parents got this house when we moved back to Tuscaloosa from Connecticut. First, we enjoyed it. It was so big and the inside was spacious, and my mother decorated it beautifully. We started to get comfortable in the house as a family and as a whole. But as weeks passed, I noticed every night when I would go in my room, I would turn all the lights off and lay down, and I would hear a slight, 'Hey.' This happened every night. I didn't say anything. I would just ignore it and go to sleep. I didn't talk to my parents about it because I didn't want to freak them out. But as months passed, it didn't stop. Every night when I go in that room to myself, I would hear the slight, 'Hey.' I finally told my parents that something wasn't right in that house. It's 3 months in for us living in there. And then my mama confirmed that she was in her bathroom and she heard a radio playing down in the basement. and she asked us, did we hear it too? And we told her no. But later that night, it was about 2:30, me and Brika and my grandma was up because my grandma was sick, and guess what? We heard that effing radio playing music. So the next morning, my mama made my daddy check the basement, and the radio was found with no cord attached to it. See the comments for the rest of the story. I went through thousands of comments, so you don't have to, and that in itself deserves a follow and a share. And then she tells the story about what actually happened when her dad went to check on the radio. She says, so my daddy found the radio with no cord. As days went by, every night we would hear that same old radio playing with the same old song sounding like a classical song. So one day, my grandma and mama left my daddy in the house by himself and went to the Piggly Wiggly on the west side. My daddy said he was in the bed and he thought he heard my mama and grandma talking in the living room. He said he got up and checked to see if they were there, and nobody was there. He said it scared him so bad, he went and sat on the porch until they came back. The rest of the story was in the comments and it was all out of whack, but here's the gist of everything. She says that my mother contacted the landlord, Miss Annie, and told her what was going on. And she came out and told my mama that the house was given to her and her children and that they moved into the house. She said her son told her he seen something with red eyes standing over him. She also said that her and her daughter would not hear nothing, but her son was terrified of the house to the point that she moved out, fixed it back up, and then rented it to my mama and daddy. She also tells the time about these beings or perhaps spirits attacking her grandmother. She says, okay, boom, my grandma was in the bed laying down and she was sleeping. She bust out screaming, waking up the whole house, telling us that something grabbed her foot. We almost had to call 911 because she was so scared. She had a panic attack. Then she talks about the time that her cousin came to the house. And she said, then when I invited my favorite cousin to come and stay the weekend, my mama cooked for us and made us go to sleep. My cousin slept in the living room and she woke everybody up telling us she heard somebody telling her, hey. She was so scared, she didn't go back to sleep and she never came back to stay with me again. Someone in the comments was like, your house had all this going on and you kept inviting people over? Funniest thing ever. She talks about the time that her mom called the pastor, and she says, so then my mom called our pastor and she came and blessed the house. And she told my mama and daddy that she seen nothing but funeral home flowers in it, and we all joined hands and prayed. But when she left, it got worse. And then I found this comment where someone allegedly knew about the house, and she said not one lie is told. That house was bad. And then she tells the story about the time another set of cousins came over. Here's what she said. And after that incident with my grandma, it got worse. My cousins drove from Birmingham to Tuscaloosa to see us, but we wasn't home, and they didn't know. They came and knocked on our door, and him and his wife, they said they heard a woman talking in the living room, but nobody answered the door because we wasn't there. They called us and asked us if we was there, and we told them no. They told us they thought we was there because they heard a woman talking at the door. I'm guessing people didn't believe her story because she took to social media to defend herself, and she says what she experienced was real. I did a little digging, and at one time, Annie Pearl Billups did own that home. And I also found that the house was built in 1945. She's supposed to be going live to tell part 2 of the story and to give us the details about everything that happened and what was the final breaking point for her family moving out of that house. So if you want to follow this story, you can go check out her profile, or you can like and share this video. Make sure you follow me, because when she does that part 2, I'm going to come back and let y'all know what's what, because this story is crazy.